Hello again. So we are past the 25th of May, so past GDPR area. Still in it, anyway. We're still alive, but I thought it was a good idea to go online and look at our customers in automotive and see how they approach it, because before the 25th of May we had a lot of discussion and questions from you and colleagues of you. How do we need to approach it? So there was a lot of what we call vague areas, grey areas in the GDPR law, how to translate it into reality. So what I did, together with the team, we went to a lot of websites. I'm going to show you how many in a few moments, to see how they're approaching a couple of things, like cookies and consent. So we didn't went very deep, we didn't look how a cookie was set, how it was stored, and all those stuff. No, I was just looking at how his consent is used and how our cookies approached from an outsider, a web visitor point of view. So we have, as you know, 22 brands that we serve, automotive brands in Europe, in 90 countries, not everybody in 90 countries, but in general it is. So in total, I went together with the team, to 345 websites in the past weeks to look how consent was used. So it was quite an interesting job, to be honest. And so we looked how consent was used and managed for cookies, but also how PII data was used. So there are forms on the website. Is consent asked there, yes or no? And also, as an objective user, website visitor, did I receive enough information about cookies, about consent, about privacy, if I went on the website? So a couple of findings, and you will see not percentages, although it should be easy, 254, so it's easy to make a percentage, but it was not always easy to put them in buckets. And not everybody, we've seen it in the next slides, not everybody it was not clear always what was the approach, but what was clear, what the trends were, what was the general strategy. And one thing is the majority, I mean more than 85%, almost 90% is using a global consent approach. And what do I mean with that? It's a good example from in the newspaper industry. You have cookies and they say, yes, I accept cookies, you can click on it, and at that moment you get we give a consent on cookies. This is a very active consent. There are also alternatives, like if you continue browsing on this website, you give consent, that kind of approach. So, but in general, a consent was asked in one way or another, so that's one approach. A cookie management, also very interesting. When we started with GDPR, everybody around, I think also in this audience, went for, we need a global opt-in on cookies, so no pre-ticked boxes, that kind of stuff. If you now go on websites, the majority, and again, almost 90% is going for an opt-out approach. So the cookies are accepted, and if you then look on the cookie management system, all the cookies are pre-ticked. All the functional, the analytical, the behavioral cookies. Only a few, less than 10%, are using an opt-in approach towards cookies. Also interesting, if there was a cookie management approach, how did they approach that? There are several ways of doing that. The majority, again, did it through a link to suppliers, or to say, look, you can go into your browser and go on the browser settings to modify the opt-in and the opt-out on cookies. Some vendors have a home-built, I call it, a legacy system, where you can just click on something and then automatically in the backend the same thing was applied, and they went to suppliers like Google or Facebook, or went to the browser and enabled or disabled the cookies. Only a few, I have only 2 brands, used partners like Evidon, OneTrust, TrustArc, to have a cookie mechanism, cookie management consent platform on the website. So a really small portion of it. But also very important, the majority, it's 100%. I didn't find another one. is using consent on PII data. At the moment you ask for what is your name, your first name, your phone number, email address, there was a not pre-ticked, so a box that you have to click on, or a very clear statement in the form that's saying, okay, we're going to use this data for X, Y, and Z, so you're giving your consent. So that was very clear. So again, and that's one of the things. It was there's a great tendencies that you can see, and like global consent, opt out, and on PII data there's a specific consent asked. Also interesting, you see what's originally happened in Europe. You see it's going global. You see with some one of the observations we had. So also the Californian privacy law that will go in effect in November 2018 will take huge parts of GDPR in that referendum. I see the same things happening in Latin America and South America. Also in Russia, Eastern Europe are going in the same direction. We receive a lot of privacy impact assessments also from those regions. And it's important, more and more GDPR is linked to ISO 27001. There's a link to that more and more we see on websites. So these are also a few of trends that we saw in the observations from the website. So some takeaways. I think it's certainly not consistent pan-Europe. We see global trends, but not a very consistent approach in the industry. It's also not always consistent with brands. Sometimes you see a certain brand doing it in certain countries in a certain way, and other countries in another way. When we started our survey in the more than 300 websites, we saw that when we went back to some websites, it was already changed. So a lot of those websites is work in progress. And what I said already, the majority has a global acceptance on cookies and PII data. And in general, the information that is provided in privacy statements, at least for our observations, was very clear and very to the point. Any questions? Yeah.
I have one question from a consumer perspective. Is there any consumers who get really annoyed by having to click on, I go to a website and I don't know how many times I have to click before I can go to it. Is there any information about that? Because I think that's also important.
I do not know. I was a bit annoyed after 354 minutes. No, not joking. But I do not. Yeah, maybe no. It's like the thing we did was the exercise we did was purely an observation, just an Excel file, black and white, not an accusation, certainly not a legal advice. You need to do X, Y, or Z. It was just for how the industry was behaving after the 25th of May compared to what we discussed pre-25th.
And what about the data going outside of the EU? Is it also if the user gives us consent to transfer data outside of the EU? Is it okay if that consent is enough to transfer data outside of the EU?
I'm not here to give, again, legal advice. I don't think so, to be honest. But that's something you need to take up with your legal team, internal legal team, to make an approach. Thank you.